Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I found this meme of these 20 very interesting individuals. Some I've covered before. And I thought, you know what? Let's cover them all shortly. And if some might be interesting, I will cover them in a larger video later on. There will be chapters, so you can jump to anyone you're interested in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Go from top left, and then we go right. We'll start with Vlado Dapcevic. He was a communist too radical for Yugoslavia.
Ja sam arhitelinista I čitavoga života sam se borio za pobjedu ideje komunizma. Koliko sam znao, mogao I umio.
And now in the more silly stuff, I wouldn't say he is very interesting, but it's mostly his prison time that is quite well documented. He in total spent 24 years inside of a prison cell. He was quite an active young man. When he was 16, he became member of the Communist Youth and got arrested, became member of the Yugoslav Communist Party in 1934. In 1935, he spent time in jail for revolutionary activities. During massive communist protests in Montenegro in 1936, he was arrested again and spent 4 months in Sarajevo prison. And soon after he was released, he wanted to fly to Spain and become volunteer for the communists in Spain. But he was taken into questioning. He participated in the Battle of Pjevlja, where he was wounded. During the war, he was expelled from the party because of disagreement with the leadership, but he got readmitted because of the courage in the battlefield. He became the commander of the Yugoslav National Army Administration, in charge of agitation and propaganda. He tried to escape to Romania, together with 2 Montenegrin generals. One of the 2 generals were shot, and the other one was arrested. And he himself managed to escape to Belgrade and hid for a while, but he got arrested when trying to cross into Hungary. After 2 years in investigation prison, he was sentenced to 20 years in jail. One of the prisons being that Tok thing that I showed previously. He was tortured to give up his communist views, but he never fully did. He escaped to Albania in 1958 and emigrated to the USSR. But he had clashes with the USSR because he tried to get Russians to volunteer in Cuba. So he was kind of kicked out in 1966, emigrated to Western Europe. He was arrested in France, in Belgium, in the Netherlands and Switzerland. When he was in Western Europe, he also tried to get in contact with Marxist-Leninist parties who supported the Soviets, and the Yugoslav Secret Service tried to kill him in 1973. The Secret Service, for example, kidnapped him, but the people who arrested him got shot. They broke my teeth, cut off my tongue, ripped up my throat, broke my ribs, and hurt all my internal organs. In the end, they put up some kind of bandana on my head and my nose. I completely lost consciousness. I woke up next evening in Belgrade Central Prison, in the basement cell. And Vlado also started in 1992 his own party in Yugoslavia called Party of Labor, which still exists but has 0 seats in the National Assembly.
Niti sam zločinac, ni terorista, čovjek koji je smatrao da treba na drugi način, politički drugi način, rješavati neke probleme u Jugoslaviji.
Gleb Bokii. Well, I've done a video about him before, so go check that out because I've done a lot of deep dives, but I'm just going to do the TLDR, the funny part, and a few of the stories I told in that video. Gleb invited shamans, mediums and other people into his research team of decryption to see if he can learn more, and he thought they'd learn more. He actually thought that by these people, which has an order tradition, they view things outside the box, we can learn how to decrypt language that's also outside the box. And he thought that worked quite well, so he continued doing that. After some time, actually, he had entire seminars where he was teaching people about occultist ideas and having weird shamans there teaching them occultic ideas. So many people hated it. They were bored out of their mind, but it's like, yeah, but this is how we crack the codes. This is how I, Gleb Bokii, crack the codes. This is why you need me. And the more this went on, the more he himself started to believe in the occult. He started to believe in, well, 2 different ideas, I should say. He was his main point of occultism. One was the harmony between sort of society, nature, and self. He believed that for the best human civilization, or human development, we need harmony, full harmony. Think it is like the vril again, and like, as we talked about the vril previously. The vril, it's if you have the harmony, you can then build up human morality and the rest, and sort of create the better people. if you have harmony. In a later time, his entire department turned into more or less occultism. He spent a lot of time being a bit of a womanizer, fucking a lot of department guys' wives, which happened for some reason. But also he spent a lot of time doing rituals of Tibetan tradition, or other sort of like Eastern tradition. What he defined as like Eastern traditions he tried to do. So they spent a lot of time in a dacha, doing rituals outside, being half naked or having sexual orgies, doing different things to get the energy necessary to do their work and sort of be connected with the Gartha. So in a sense, his entire department became occultism. It became Bolshevistic occultism, just because he was really good at cracking codes. Yeah, but obviously this didn't last forever. Nothing really lasts forever. He got arrested during the purge and shot the same day he was trialed. Jean-Francois Thiriart. Reading up on this guy, he's a bit lost, I should say that. He's from a left-wing family. In the 1914s, he joined the Fichebund, which is a German National Socialistic propaganda organization, which made him support the National Socialists in Germany at the time, in which he would later collaborate with, joining the Waffen-SS. He spent time in jail because of this, and didn't become active again until the 60s, when Belgium, which he's from, let the Belgian Congo become independent. He saw this as a betrayal, because he wanted Belgium to have strong international presence and not decolonize. And because of this, he started to become active again, mostly focusing on the idea of pan-Europeanism. He did disavow fascism and National Socialism, but still having certain sympathies for it. He was very active in different pan-Europeanist movements, taking a lot of inspiration from Francis Bacchiocchi. And later in his life, he started to view communism as quite a good alternative because of how strong the nation is. So more and more having sympathies, and especially sympathies for Ceausescu in Romania, but also sympathies towards Stalinism. One can define him as a national Bolshevistic pan-Europeanist, and because of that he also got relations with Alexander Dugin and a few others. Now where do I begin with this man, Mr. Nihal Atsiz? The amount of times I've seen Turks with his profile picture, it's ridiculous. He's a Turkish ultranationalist, a pure pan-Turanist, anti-Muslim, anti-Arab, just pure tyrannic Turkish. Even though he himself was a Muslim, he didn't like the Arab Muslims. He opposed atheism, he condemned communism, and he defended the existence of God. He said morality is very important for society. Islam is a national religion of the Turks. He was also a very proud racist. He wrote that the Kipchak in Lithuania, which is the Tatars in Lithuania, and the Kyrgyz are of the same blood and therefore Turks, but alien people living in Turkey, like Jews, are not Turks, even if they speak Turkish. He still has quite a large influence in Turkey for the moment, but any Turkish ultranationalist still likes him a lot. We are not Europeans, we are Asians, and we are cold as ice, and above all, we are Turks. Jörg Lanz von Liebenfels. Now we're getting into very odd territories, but very interesting.
I, Jörg Lanz von Liebenfels, was born in Messina, Sicily, on May 1st, 1872. My father was Baron Johann Lanz de Liebenfels.
Now, there's quite a lot of interesting things here. One, Adolf Hitler did take a lot of inspiration, but in the same time he also didn't like him. So he, as stated there, they tried to dismantle him, tried to remove him from history in a sense, because with this Austrian Volkism of Catholic order is not what we need our own. But for Lanz himself, he also found a lot of his ideas when he was part of a monastery, the Order of the Cistercians.
I was an idealist, an absolute fool, enticed by temptations, threatened by subhuman creatures. That's why I entered the monastery, not out of weakness, but out of my desire for purity. I chose the name of George the Dragon Slayer. He hurls the dragon's brood aside. Apparently, I was after God's own wish. Because in the monastery, he showed me the picture of the dragon I had to kill.
He had a lot of these ideas when he looked at knights, something that absolutely fascinated him. And he viewed the angels as perfect being. The angels choosing the Aryan people to fight against the human animals, and that the angels had guided him to help the angel people and slay the dragon.
One of them attracted my attention with an almost electric force. It showed a heroic noble knight. His right hand points downward to a dragon-like creature. I wanted to know more about this gravestone. When that very night I had a dream in which I saw a Knight Templar.
So also it seems like August Strindberg, Sweden's most important novelist, had quite an effect on
Strindberg,
France.
a Swede, had moved to Austria in 1893 with his wife Frida Uhl. But within 2 years the marriage was over, and Lantz met him in 1896 when Strindberg went to stay with his daughter near Werfenstein. Werfenstein was destined to become the spiritual home of Lantz's self-styled Order of New Templars that later claimed Strindberg as a fellow traveller. Lantz was a fervent admirer of Strindberg's racist novella Chandala, published in German in 1894.
Alright, so I need to wrap this up a little bit. It's fascinating. Like, this guy is completely cuckoo. But Hitler read one of his magazines called Ostara for the blonde man, and with the concept of something called theosologia, which is the idea that there are different racial classes of the blonde man top and then the others in the bottom.
We will build Valhalla's future without the Pope, without the Jew. Heil.
Antonio Negri, a prominent Italian anti-authoritarian Marxist philosopher.
It is not true that we are free in this society. We are only free to get up every morning and go to work. The idea that work ennobles is a capitalist invention.
He's a bit of an Italian urban left-wing academic. In the 70s he was accused of assisting the Red Brigade, this being a Marxist-Leninist militant group in Italy during the years of lead in Italy, quite an awful time in Italy, which was involved in the murder of Aldo Moro, an Italian prime minister. And he got charged from this, even though the cases were dropped a little later.
Aldo Moro, the chairman of the Christian Democrats, is kidnapped and his bodyguards shot. The Red Brigades claim responsibility for the kidnapping. A military logic has prevailed, from which Negri distances himself.
Quello è stato il momento in cui tutti si sono resi conto, i compagni, diciamo così, della mia tradizione, dei miei gruppi, si sono tutti, quasi praticamente tutti, reso conto che eravamo davanti a una scadenza fatale, ecco, per così dire. E c'è stata quindi una grossissima pressione per il rilascio di Moro. Una grossissima pressione che passava attraverso canali che più o meno conoscevamo, cioè da un lato verso il Partito Socialista, perché il Partito Socialista, Craxi, era l'unico che voleva a tutti i costi che Moro fosse salvato.
Almost a year later, the state moves against the intellectual leaders of the Autonomia movement. On April 7, 1979, they are arrested. In the following years, 60,000 activists are investigated and 25,000 arrested. Special laws allow defendants to be held in jail for years. It is the first step of a massive retaliation by the state against the Italian left.
Quando mi trovo in prigione con 17 omicidi e Moro compreso, vengo riconosciuto come qualcuno che aveva partecipato a Via Fani, cioè non potevo aspettarmi che di essere accusato di essere il capo del movimento e delle Brigate Rosse.
And because in being a left-wing academic, a lot of the main guys like Michel Foucault commented on it, stating that he had nothing to do with that. Even Deleuze protested against his imprisonment. An academic falsely accused of left-wing terror. When it comes to his ideology, his biggest form is the idea against nation-state. It takes a few different interpretations in a few of his different books. It's, nation-state in relation to the capital. How is it, then, that Labour, with all its life-affirming potential, has become a means of capitalist discipline, exploitation, and domination in modern society. And one of the big books on this is Empire, which discusses imperialism in the form of nation states. The rise of empire is the end of national conflict. The enemy now, whomever it is, can no longer be ideological or national. The enemy now must be understood as a kind of criminal, as someone who represents a threat not to a political system or a nation, but to the law. This is the enemy as a terrorist. The new order that envelops the entire space of civilization. Where conflict between nations has been made irrelevant, the enemy is simultaneously banalized. Or just TLDR, United States being a global empire, NATO being a global empire, or any future other nation-state empire.
Meanwhile, Empire, the book Negri co-authored with Michael Hart, is published in the United States. It becomes a world bestseller and is celebrated as the Communist Manifesto of the 21st century.
Neness aijo. Now this person actually wanted to cover also before, when I did my Nazbol video. Latvian-born black man who was a big part of the Russian National Bolshevist Party.
Здравствуйте, уважаемые товарищи! Внимание! СОС! Латвийская правящая хунта раскрутила зловещий маховик политических репрессий.
Yeah, this is a lol cow. It's just, I had no deep, he wrote the next Communist Manifesto about, no, this is nothing, it's a lol cow. Oh, yeah, so he's been part of the National Bolshevik Party since 1998, he's been in prison all over the place. He supported, obviously, the Russian annexation of Crimea and the Donbass. He's for an imperial Russia. His mother's Russian, his father's Ugandan. The Black Lenin here, he did small things. Smoke bomb when George W. Bush visited Latvia. Part of rallies in the Communist Party in Great Britain. He went to Palestine and did some activities against Israel. But overall, nothing. He was charged in a Latvian court for calling for the violent overthrow of the government. Since 2022, he's a Russian citizen. And his Latvian citizenship has been revoked. Okay, we're going from a lol cow to genuinely, not good. Yaki arklöv. The way Yaki was brought up is sadly quite common nowadays, or people with mixed heritage. His mother is a Liberian woman, and his father was a 60-year-old Englishman. He never really met his father, and he was raised by his stepfather from the United States, named Joe. They only spent 1 year together until he got heavily sick and had to move to the United States. His mother decided to adopt away Jackie. Both of them came to Norway when they were 2. And a lot in Jackie's early childhood, he dreamed of moving to the United States to his stepfather, joining the American military. His new adopted family is in Sweden, up in Lapland, South Lapland. They owned a store, and they lived above the store that they owned. And very early, he had identity crisis on who he is. A lot of the moving, but mostly his mixed heritage, caused a lot of concerns. And because of that, he got a fascination of World War II and National Socialism. At the age of 17, he started military service, but got denied later on for further military education. And he tried to become part of the French Foreign Legion, but the French Foreign Legion didn't want him either. When he was 19 years old, he traveled to Zagreb to join the Yugoslav War and joined the Bosnian Croat army, because they were closer to the National Socialistic ideas that he had. Well, here he committed quite a lot of war crimes. I will try to explain some of them here. He noted a lot of this down in his journals. On the 14th of July, Arklöv's group went to the village of Rotmia, where both civilians and children were killed. For example, a 10-year-old boy named Adela Bukman and his 5-year-old brother, Adis. They went from village to village, burning down Muslim villages, throwing grenades into their homes. Important testimony given by Mildivia Cesar, at that point 22 years old and pregnant in her 3rd month, that Jackie would personally torture her between the 14th and 16th of July, calling her a whore, separating her from children and the rest, forced her on the ground, forcing her to say Allahu Akbar while he was pointing a gun in her mouth. He would kick her on her back, screaming, "Say it!" This brutal torture would damage her uterus and kill her child. He would scream, "Continue walking, you whore," threatening to cut off the child in the stomach with a knife. many times lighting cigarettes on her, forcing her to swallow lighted cigarettes while kicking and slapping her. Other times he would threaten some of the prisoners by pouring gasoline on them and saying that he would burn them alive. For this, he was charged by a Bosnian court for war crimes, in which he would spend 13 years in jail, but they managed to get it down to 8 years in jail, and then later on, the Red Cross did a prisoner exchange, bringing him back to Sweden.
Erkänner, men, och vad framstår jag då som? En människa utan egen vilja. En människa som inte kan ta eget beslut, som inte har några egna tankar. Då det gäller skuldfrågan så placerar jag mig själv i just det brotten jag har begått. Och även till och fått andra människor genom enbart att medverka och nicka. Ja, till att också indirekt uppmuntra andra människor till brott genom att enbart medverka själv.
I understand what you think. With all of what happened in Bosnia, can it get worse? Yes, it does. When he came back, he dealt with a lot of post-traumatic stress. Has panic attacks and problem sleeping, visions, he doesn't trust anybody. And this obviously leads to all types of provocation, pub fights and the rest. And he started to join neo-Nazi gatherings in Sweden, which would lead to the second crime that puts him life in jail. Oh well, he's soon out, but soon kinda life in jail.
25-åriga Jackie Arklöv finns nu på intensiven på Södersjukhuset i Stockholm.
Han har fått ett skott som har tagit sannolikt från ryggsidan strax ovanför midjan och som har gått tvärs igenom höger bröstkorgshalva och gått ut strax nedanför den högra bröstvårtan. Men om inga oförutsedda komplikationer inträffar så är den definitivt inte livshotande.
Jackie Arklöv was robbing a bank, which he managed to get 2.6 million crowns. But during the escape, they shot at police officers. 2 police officers were shot. 1 in the forehead and 1 in the neck. At a later time, Jackie Arklöv was shot, which he could be sent to the hospital and then arrested. 2nd February 2000, he got a lifetime sentence for armed robbery, murder, and attempt of murder. Alright, let's move on to the next person. This is a bit much. Let's talk about Corneliu Codreanu. Now, Codreanu, dear, how many times you guys have told me to cover this man and all the little minions he has under him. I do know every Romanian knows this man, and they either love him or hate him. He is the Archangel Michael of Romania. Codreanu is massive. So if we cover what's written on this thing here, the least obscure person, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of this man. I can talk about him for about an hour or two. A violent anti-Semite, anti-communist and terrorist since youth. I have noticed a bit of a pattern, in particular how this guy wrote this person here. I've noticed a bit of a pattern how he wrote down Codreanu, because everyone else is quite objective, even the cuckoo crazy people. It's like, he did that. This is a lot of his personal opinions coming through. This person do not like Codreanu. I mean, Codreanu comes from quite a large family with a lot of different opinions throughout his entire family, some more extreme than others. But I'm lacking to see how, from a young age, he was the most radical person. His charisma and his legacy that he's left behind and why people are so mixed is because it's not, you can't just point at him and say, this was needed to happen. He was so bad. He had a disdain for the more liberal government during his time. He did see them as traitors to the country. He wrote down a list on people who had betrayed the country, which also he wants removed, if you know what I mean with that. But nothing of that took ever form. He got arrested by his own comrades and put in trial. The other people who was part of this conspiracy also got either killed or jailed. Modeled religious practices from inspiration from Romanian Orthodox mysticism. He had a vision and was speaking to God when he was 28 through he had a vision when he was 28. He was talking to God through an icon of Archangel Michael. That's why he named a lot of his movement into the Iron Cross. The Archangel Michael's Legion had to be What do you mean, had to be executed? Had to be executed by the gendarmerie while imprisoned in 1930? What do you mean, had to be? Huh? I'm sorry, but the last statement here is completely insane. The gendarmerie is sort of a paramilitary force in Romania. Their task is dealing with high-risk personnel. So they're sort of like an elite squad of police, one can say it. And they are under control of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. States here, the 14 persons have been transported from their prisons and executed, strangled or garroted or shot by the gendarmerie around Tancabesti near Bucharest, and their bodies has been buried in the courtyard of Yilva prison. Their bodies were dissolved in acid and placed under 7 tons of concrete. That's what happened. They were just executed by them and then dissolved the bodies in acid. How is that? Had to be. Like that's a good thing that he was dissolved in acid. A big reason for the murder was because of Nazi Germany had now gained influence in Central Europe, and especially over Romania. And they didn't want the Iron Guard. They didn't view them as useful for the Nazi Germany's cause. So that's why they were killed and dissolved. Again, more or less what I pointed out earlier on, people are so mixed about Codreanu. Like, I can, again, if I wanted to do a short biography telling you who he is, it would take an hour, and he's, I would say, still one of the most important people in Romanian history, or modern Romanian history. I'm gonna leave it here. You might be disappointed I could cover more of it, but I think I can't. Valery Yemelyanov, or I should state it in Russian, Valery Yemelyanov. Yeah, but I always pronounce it wrong. I covered this guy before, and if you go to the Google, you search his name, my video comes up. I'm quite happy about that. So please check out the video. So for the people who do not know who Valery is, let's just say he's an ultra far-right person, and an extreme anti-Semite. The highest of highest anti-Semites. I don't think you can go beyond this point. Everything that is influenced by Judaism in any way is bad. This is why the neo-pagan revival focus on tradition and history away from anything to do with the Jews is very important. But if we talk more about what he created, well, up until a certain point in his life, he didn't do any political activism. He was obviously an anti-Semite, but never any political activism. He focused on Oriental studies. There's a weird correlation with Oriental study people in the people I talk about. And mostly was taught Arabic. When he was middle-aged, he created something called National Patriotic Front, or, in other words, Pamiat. Now this Pamiat, very influential. But a lot of activities these people did was quite bad. But here you can think of the far right of the far right. Which in other words, like National Bolshevism, neo-fascism, any sort of anti-Semitism you can imagine. And yes, Masons or Semites in that same regard. Communism is Semitic, so anything at all to do with Christ or Marx, gone. The weird part about Pamiat, it didn't grow that big, but influential it did. One of the members being Alexander Dugin. On the 6th day, you in the morning, take off your hat and prepare the flowers. Take them to 41, on a bloody slope, along Vladmirka, and nerves, clenched into a fist, strengthen the rebuff, the occupation of Sion that crawled like a snake in Russia by the hands of the Freemasons. Warm nest twisted, shot, trampled. Russia are the best ranks. I gave power to the puppeteers, sowing lies in every way. We will not see improvement. The boost will flourish if we do not apply zeal, destroy Sion's army. He wrote a book called Decyanation. This book goes into detail about every single Jewish influence in Russian history, Scandinavian history, any sort of history. Let's read this poem. If you accept, Prince, the Christian way, to us in Russia, I say in advance, the churchmen will fly like crows. They will bring holy scripture. Although the scripture is called holy, it is difficult to find a more depraved book. It contains lies, filth, and shameful fornication. Enmity and brotherly betrayal will get rid of their hallelujah. that in a dream we will not seen. They will sing in Russia, Isaiah rejoice. They will honor the Psalm of David, alien words. They will screech with an unlubricated cart, and the beauty will fade from them. Russia speaks knitted with silk. If grandfathers eat cranberries alone, their grandchildren will be the sore of their cheekbones. The churchmen will do a lot of troubles. They torment the people with splits. Brother will rise to brother and family to family, or fierce enmity between loved ones. Once again, strife will go across Russia, our most vile thief from the beginning. I do recommend checking the entire video out to go in detail on every aspect of that book as well. How they talk about how Solomon had a 50 generational plan, how Japan was influenced by the Jews and the rest. It goes into detail. So I will end this now. This will just be the first part, and the second part will be out as soon as I'm done with it. Alright, take care.